What if the genetic story of Oklahoma, a state known for its sweeping plains, native heritage, oil booms, and frontier spirit, turned out to be far more complex than the legends passed down through generations? A groundbreaking new genetics study reveals that the people of Oklahoma are shaped by an unexpected fusion of ancestries, blending deep indigenous roots, African American legacies, the descendants of Southern settlers, European immigrants, and even surprising traces from distant corners of the world. These findings challenge long-held assumptions and paint a richer, more intricate portrait of the state's human history. Let's dive into the surprising genetic origins of Oklahomans. 1. Uncovering the past, the genetic tapestry of Oklahoma. The story of Oklahoma is often told through history books, but recent advances in genetic research are revealing a deeper, more intricate tale, written not on paper, but in DNA. What scientists are discovering is that the genetic makeup of Oklahomans reflects centuries of convergence, conflict, and community among a wide range of peoples. Oklahoma is home to one of the largest native populations in the country. The forced relocation of more than 60 tribes into the area during the 19th century established the state as a unique cultural and genetic hub. Today, many residents trace significant ancestry to tribes such as the Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole. This heritage lives on not only in tradition and identity, but in the DNA markers passed from generation to generation. But the genetic story doesn't stop with indigenous heritage. Enslaved African Americans brought to Indian territory by Southern slaveholders contributed significantly to the population. Their descendants, many of whom identify as both African American and Native American, show complex ancestral patterns. Genetic evidence reveals a blend of sub-Saharan African, Native American, and European lineages. Immigration waves in the late 19th and early 20th centuries introduced additional layers. European settlers from Germany, Ireland, and Eastern Europe arrived to farm and work in Oklahoma's growing oil industry. In recent decades, Hispanic, Vietnamese, and other global communities have added even more richness to the state's population. Altogether, Oklahoma's genetic tapestry is one of the most diverse in the country. It reflects not just migration and mingling, but survival, adaptation, and cultural fusion over centuries. Science is showing what history sometimes overlooks. The people of Oklahoma carry stories from across the world in every cell of their bodies. Meanwhile, subscribe now for more surprising stories hidden in your DNA and your state's past. 2. Native roots and global branches, where Oklahomans really come from. To understand where Oklahomans come from, it's not enough to look at maps or treaties. The answer lies in their DNA, an intricate mosaic of ancient and modern ancestries that reaches far beyond state borders. Genetic studies are revealing that Oklahomans are among the most ancestrally diverse populations in the country. At the foundation of this diversity are the native nations that were forcibly relocated to the state during the 19th century. Tribes like the Cherokee, Muskogee, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole all have ancestral homelands outside Oklahoma, but their descendants have now lived in the state for generations. These groups maintain strong cultural traditions and show distinctive Native American genetic markers, such as mitochondrial DNA lineages, passed from mother to child for centuries. However, Native ancestry is just one part of the picture. African American populations in Oklahoma also trace back to a mix of African, indigenous, and European origins. Many are descendants of black freedmen, formerly enslaved individuals who lived among the tribes. Their genetic profiles often show this unique blend, reflecting a history of intermarriage, shared hardship, and cultural exchange. European ancestry also runs deep in Oklahoma's population. Settlers from the South and Midwest arrived in waves, many bringing Scots-Irish, German, and English roots. Later immigration introduced Polish, Czech, and Italian communities. More recently, increasing numbers of Hispanic and Asian families have brought new cultural and genetic influences, especially in urban areas. The result is a population that cannot be defined by a single origin story. Instead, Oklahomans represent a living example of how geography, history, and migration shape identity in complex ways. Their genetic roots are native, southern, African, European, and global, branches of a family tree as wide as the world itself. 3. DNA surprises, unexpected ancestral links found in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's diverse cultural landscape might suggest a certain level of ancestral variety, but what geneticists are finding goes beyond even the most imaginative expectations. DNA testing has uncovered surprising ancestral links that challenge traditional narratives about who Oklahomans are and where they come from. One of the most unexpected findings involves Native ancestry in populations who might not self-identify as Native American. Many African American residents of Oklahoma, especially those with ties to the state's historical freedmen communities, show measurable Native American DNA. This is a result of complex interactions between Native tribes and enslaved Africans in the 19th century, interactions that included intermarriage, alliance, and shared histories of resistance. Another surprising element is the extent of European ancestry in groups assumed to be primarily indigenous or African American. Genetic markers reveal that historically, European men often had children with Native and African women, a pattern that left clear traces in the Y chromosome lineages found in many Oklahomans today. These imprints of gendered mixing are a stark reminder of the social hierarchies and inequalities of the past. Even more unexpected are the small but significant traces of ancestry from regions as far away as East Asia and the Middle East. These often result from modern immigration or older undocumented migration routes. For example, some residents of Hispanic heritage show East Asian or Middle Eastern markers due to historical mixing in Latin America before arriving in Oklahoma. DNA testing has also revealed how connected Oklahomans are to other parts of the U.S. and the world. Shared genetic markers link them to populations in the southeastern United States, West Africa, Northern Europe, and indigenous nations of the Plains and Southeast. In short, the average Oklahoman may carry ancestral stories that cross oceans and centuries. What might appear as a simple heritage on the surface often turns out to be a fascinating blend of the unexpected. 4. From the Trail of Tears to today, tracing Oklahoma's genetic story. The genetic history of Oklahoma is inseparable from the profound legacy of the Trail of Tears. In the early 1830s, the U.S. government forcibly relocated more than 60 Native American tribes from their ancestral homes in the southeast to what is now Oklahoma. The journey was brutal, marked by disease, starvation, and death. But the survivors established new communities: Cherokee, Muskogee, Choctaw, Seminole, and Chickasaw, each bringing with them centuries of cultural knowledge and a unique genetic signature. Those tribes didn't arrive alone. Many brought enslaved Africans with them, people who had already been caught in the brutal machinery of slavery. In Indian Territory, these African Americans lived among the tribes, forming tightly connected communities. Intermarriage and cultural exchange followed. Today, the descendants of these communities often carry genetic traces of both African and Native ancestry, an inheritance rooted in shared struggle and resilience. After Oklahoma achieved statehood in 1907, new waves of settlers arrived, mostly of European descent, including Germans, Irish, English, and Eastern Europeans. This added fresh layers of ancestry to the state's population. Throughout the 20th century, immigration from Mexico, Vietnam, and other countries further diversified the gene pool. Modern DNA studies show how all these historical forces have shaped the people of Oklahoma. Mitochondrial DNA, which is passed from mothers to children, often reveals Native or African maternal lines. Meanwhile, Y chromosome analysis shows a dominant pattern of European male ancestry, reflecting the power dynamics of early colonial and frontier society. From forced removal to multicultural settlement, The genetic story of Oklahoma is one of pain and perseverance, but also of connection. Today's Oklahomans carry in their blood a living record of migration, survival, and a people shaped by history's most dramatic turns. 5. European, African, and Indigenous, a genetic melting pot in the heartland. Oklahoma is often described as a cultural crossroads, but its genetic diversity goes even deeper. The people of this state are a true biological blend of European, African, and indigenous ancestries, woven together over centuries through hardship, migration, and unexpected alliances. European settlers brought varied ancestries to Oklahoma, including English, Irish, Scots-Irish, German, and Polish roots. Many came to the region for opportunity, drawn by promises of land, freedom, and a new start. Their genetic contributions are still seen today in common European DNA markers, passed down through both maternal and paternal lines. But these settlers arrived in a state already reshaped by indigenous history. Native Americans had been forcibly relocated from across the Southeast and Midwest during the 1800s. Their descendants carry unique mitochondrial DNA markers found only in the Americas, evidence of ancestry that predates European colonization by thousands of years. These lineages remain strong, especially in families with deep tribal ties. African Americans have long been a vital part of Oklahoma's population. Some arrived as enslaved people brought by native tribes. Others came later, fleeing violence in the Deep South to build communities in what was once seen as a black safe haven. Their DNA tells a story of survival, often showing sub-Saharan African roots alongside Native and European ancestry. What makes Oklahoma distinct is how often these three streams, European, African, and indigenous, have intersected. In many families, those lineages are not separate, but intertwined. This admixture is visible in the DNA of everyday Oklahomans, many of whom are surprised to find unexpected ancestral threads linking them to distant continents and forgotten histories. Rather than dilute identity, this blending has created a people as complex and layered as the state itself. Oklahoma is not one story, it's many stories, written in the very fabric of its people. 6. Science meets history. What DNA says about Oklahoma's settlers. History books offer names and dates, but DNA tells us how those stories lived on. In Oklahoma, genetics is filling in the gaps, confirming old family lore, and sometimes turning conventional wisdom on its head. The state's settlers, once seen as mostly European frontiersmen and native survivors, turn out to be part of a far more diverse and blended human story. When scientists analyze the DNA of Oklahomans today, they often find unexpected results. A person who identifies as white might carry small but significant native ancestry. Someone from a historically black community may also carry European and indigenous genetic markers. These discoveries are not anomalies, they are reflections of how cultures merged over generations. Much of this blending occurred during Oklahoma's early settlement period. European men frequently fathered children with Native and African women, a pattern shaped by the power imbalances of frontier life. Over time, this resulted in an uneven inheritance. Paternal lines often trace back to Europe, while maternal lines show Native or African roots. That asymmetry is still detectable in the DNA of many families today. In some cases, DNA is confirming old oral histories, tales passed down across generations, once dismissed as myth. A grandmother's claim of Cherokee ancestry or a whispered connection to black freedmen is now supported by genetic evidence. In others, science is offering new revelations, surprising people with ancestral connections to places like the Middle East, Southeast Asia, or indigenous Mexico. Genetic testing doesn't erase history, it enhances it. By layering personal data onto the historical record, science offers a fuller picture of who Oklahoma's settlers really were. It turns the abstract into the intimate, revealing how the big movements of people and policy left a lasting imprint in the bloodlines of today's Oklahomans. 7. Oklahoma's genetic puzzle: what makes its people unique? Oklahoma's genetic story isn't just a mix of influences, it's a puzzle unlike any other in the United States. What makes Oklahomans genetically unique is the extraordinary convergence of histories, cultures, and migrations, all layered into a single population. This uniqueness begins with the sheer number of federally recognized tribes that call Oklahoma home. Over 30 tribal nations are headquartered in the state, many as a result of forced relocation. Unlike other states where native ancestry is more dispersed or diminished, Oklahoma has maintained strong indigenous communities where cultural identity and bloodlines remain tightly connected. Layered on top of this are the descendants of European settlers from across the continent, Scots-Irish from Appalachia, Germans from the Midwest, and Eastern Europeans escaping war and poverty. These settlers often intermarried with both Native Americans and African Americans, creating diverse family trees that span continents. What stands out in genetic studies is how frequently these lineages cross. Many Oklahomans carry small but measurable traces of multiple ancestries, often from unexpected sources. One person might have English and Choctaw roots, while another could trace connections to both West Africa and Central Europe. Oklahoma is also home to one of the highest rates of multiracial identification in the country. This isn't just about identity, it's reflected in the genome. The frequency of genetic admixture here is higher than in many surrounding states, revealing a population shaped by openness, survival, and adaptation. Rather than fitting a single genetic mold, Oklahomans often defy categorization. Their DNA tells a story of boundaries crossed, cultures merged, and histories remembered in the most intimate way possible, through the bloodlines passed down from one generation to the next. That complexity is exactly what makes them stand out. 8. The genetic map of Oklahoma. If you could visualize Oklahoma's genetic makeup like a map, it would resemble a patchwork quilt, each region stitched together by different threads of ancestry and migration. Though genetic diversity is found across the state, patterns emerge when you zoom in on particular areas. In the eastern part of the state, Native American ancestry is especially concentrated. This is where the 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Choctaw, Muskogee, Chickasaw, and Seminole, were relocated during the 19th century. Generations later, many families here still carry distinct genetic markers that trace back to pre-Columbian America, a rare feature in most of the United States. Central and northern Oklahoma show stronger European ancestry, reflecting the migration of settlers from the Midwest and South. These regions were shaped by the land-run era and homesteading, bringing in families of English, German, and Irish descent. Their DNA often includes Northern and Western European traits, sometimes with minor native admixture. Western Oklahoma adds another layer, reflecting Hispanic influence from Texas and Mexico. Recent migration from Latin America has left its genetic mark, blending indigenous Central American, Spanish, and even East Asian ancestry into the state's already complex profile. In urban centers like Oklahoma City and Tulsa, the genetic map becomes more kaleidoscopic. These cities attract people from across the country and around the world. African American communities here often carry a unique blend of West African, European, and Native ancestry, reflecting both the state's freedmen legacy and broader migration patterns. The result is a living, shifting genetic map, one that's as dynamic as the people who make up the state. Instead of hard borders or clean divisions, Oklahoma's DNA shows interwoven paths, like highways crossing and merging. Every strand tells a story, and when viewed together, they form a portrait of an unusually diverse population. 9. What this changes. For generations, many Oklahomans believed they knew where they came from. Family stories, tribal affiliations, or surnames were enough to anchor identity. But genetic science is changing that. not by erasing the past, but by expanding it. DNA testing has challenged long-held assumptions. Some who never identified with native ancestry have discovered clear genetic links to tribal lineages. Others, long connected to native heritage through culture or tradition, may find little or no indigenous DNA in their results. This can feel disorienting, even controversial. But it underscores a key truth. Identity is both biological and lived. DNA offers one lens, but it doesn't override community, memory, or belonging. One of the most transformative aspects of this new understanding is its power to connect people. Genetic testing has reunited families, confirmed distant relationships, and revealed previously unknown histories. For many African American Oklahomans, discovering native ancestry helps illuminate gaps left by slavery and segregation. For others, it's a starting point for reclaiming lost connections to ancestors and cultures that history tried to silence. It also shifts how we understand the state itself. Oklahoma isn't just a place where cultures coexisted, it's a place where they blended. The science reinforces what many have felt for generations, that Oklahomans are shaped by complexity, resilience, and the convergence of many worlds. In classrooms, communities, and families, the conversation is changing. Genetics invites a deeper look at the roots beneath our feet and the ones inside us. It adds detail to the story of Oklahoma, not just by telling us who we are, but by reminding us how we got here. The map isn't being redrawn. It's being colored in with richer, more personal shades. 10. What's next? The genetic story of Oklahoma is far from over. As science advances, and as more people choose to explore their ancestry through DNA testing, the picture continues to evolve. What we know today is just the beginning. One of the most promising developments is the growth of indigenous-led genetic research. Tribal nations are taking charge of how their histories are represented in the scientific record, ensuring that DNA studies are conducted with respect, consent, and cultural awareness. This could lead to deeper insights into tribal migrations, ancient lineages, and the health implications of specific genetic traits. Technology is also making it easier for individuals to trace their ancestry with greater precision. Where early DNA tests gave broad categories like sub-Saharan African or Native American, newer tools can pinpoint ancestry to specific regions or even communities. This means that future Oklahomans may be able to map their roots with unprecedented detail, down to tribal groups, ethnic enclaves, or migration waves. But the future isn't just about science, it's about stories. As more people share their DNA results, a broader conversation is emerging about race, heritage, and identity. In Oklahoma, this means confronting the legacies of colonization, slavery, and displacement, but also celebrating the resilience and richness of a blended people. Schools may begin integrating genetic history into curriculums. Museums and cultural centers could add DNA-based exhibits. Even local governments might use genetic insights to guide public health, acknowledging how ancestral background can shape medical risks and responses. Ultimately, what comes next is a more informed, more inclusive understanding of who Oklahomans are. The past is written in our DNA, but the future is what we choose to make of that knowledge. Oklahoma's story isn't just continuing, it's unfolding in real time in every generation to come. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through Oklahoma's genetic history. If you enjoyed uncovering these unexpected truths, don't forget to hit subscribe. We're exploring the hidden stories behind every state, and your own ancestry might be next. Stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you in the next episode.